press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Namaste viewers, welcome to Jaipur Dialogue USA, our Sunday program at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Now, we have put the title, Wuhan virus is a real pandemic or is it a man-made disaster? Now, that is one question that we will know the answers to that a little later, when particularly the evidences are collected. But what we do know, and knowing what we know, is that this particular virus has created $1 trillion loss of money disappearing from the markets and business, complete change in lifestyles, psychology, sociology, economics, and politics, and it has brought about a tectonic shift the way we worked. There are people operating from home. There are certain times advantages coming because of technology, we know a lot more than we ever knew before. And that's the opening statement that I wanted to make to you, also to figure out that it takes me back to when this particular Wuhan virus was declared a pandemic. I was talking to a doctor, a very famous doctor here, who is in the front line of coronavirus battle, in charge of a 40-bed ICU and chief of medicine. And a year and a half ago, when this particular thing had happened, he said two things that was very, very remarkable. One was that this is not natural. Disasters of this kind don't happen. It's not a tsunami. You can term it a tsunami, but this is not a tsunami. There is something wrong. And his statement was based on knowing as he did, that he said that Dr. Fauci is not saying the truth. He is not warning the people. He knows more than he says, and he defends more than he needs to the facts and conceals information. That is quite remarkable. As many months down the line, with 3.3 million dead, United States and India, the world's largest economy and world's largest growing economy, both have been hit very hard. One president has lost his job, and the attack is on the other one, Prime Minister Modi, as if they are hounding him out from the office for his so-called failure to control that. But remember one thing, it's very important to know, India handled the first wave remarkably well. It is the second wave which is the killer. And despite the 4,000 plus deaths every day that India has knocked in as many weeks, India's death toll is still over 300,000 less than United States. That's a very important data to bear in mind. Number two, it has 10 million less cases than United States. But these two countries are singularly hit the hardest. I have the great pleasure of having with me Mr. Savio Rodrigues, a remarkably wonderful journalist whose Goa Chronicle is, an element. When I read his Goa Chronicle posts, I feel it is an element of truths being spoken. And there are very few people who speak the truth these days. Because in all these scenarios, the first victim is truth. Savio's Goa Chronicle has been banned, is not available for people in China to read. Now that points out to two things, the way my mind works. Either he has hit the raw nerve of the truth that Chinese are scared of, because if they were false allegations by Savio, it would have been easy to disprove them. But the fact that they are not disproving, but they're indulging in an export of United States current culture of wokeism and cancel culture, they have canceled him. So Savio, welcome to the show. And I thought that there would be no one better than you to connect the dots. So go ahead, make your day.
Vibhuti, thank you for inviting. Vibhuti, thank you for having invited me on your show. It's always a pleasure. Great to be a part of the Jaipur Dialogue USA. And it comes at a time when I'm actually elated and thrilled that a small online investigative news portal from one of India's beautiful states, Goa, actually has the power to rattle a large economic power like China, that they've decided to block us. Now, I've done a bit of trekking to find out why exactly are we blocked. And I've also written to the Premier of China uh, and the Ministry of Information and Publicity that is there in China. I'm hoping to get a response. But through my own sources, what I did find was that apparently what we were writing about and questioning the Chinese government with regards to the Wuhan virus, with regards to the COVID 19 pandemic that is globally destroying lives and homes. That is the reason why we were blocked and banned in China in all the provinces, not just one, but all the provinces. Now, it's not unusual for China to ban, but we find it as a badge of honor simply because we are not a big league player like the Google or the Facebook or even somebody as big as the VO News from India. But the mere fact that we are able to gain that kind of attention speaks about the fact that my team works purely on research, and every evidence that we have put forth has been a work of research from people who are experts in this field and believe that COVID 19, the Wuhan virus, is not a natural disaster or a work or a freak of nature. It is, in fact, a bioweapon that has been unleashed on the world. And the more we look at it, the more we minutely research it, there is no doubt in my mind that China has unleashed a bioweapon, and China must be declared as a rogue nation by the other leaders of the world and the other countries in the world, because what it's unleashed is really a very demonic and diabolic way of actually destroying world economies using a health crisis, and that cannot be forgiven. 3.5 million lives in counting as we speak right now have been lost, and many more will follow because the waves of the viruses will continue to get even more severe because the virus is mutating itself, it's adapting itself to new regions, and it's going ahead and destroying more and more lives. One aspect of the life of destruction is losing a loved one. The other aspect of that destruction is the continuation of the family, that has lost a loved one for no reason, no fault. That is why this is a war which China has unleashed on us. This is a new form of terrorism, Vibhuti. Because in our actual war, there are soldiers who dedicate themselves to in service the country, to go out there in the border to fight. So if China was fighting a war with India or any other country in the world, I would be able to say, okay, that's fair. They decided to go ahead with war. But what China has done is brought innocent civilians into this warfare and caused lot of taken away a lot of lives for people who were not a part of this war. And you have no right to take innocent lives that are not a part of the war that you have initiated. And that's where China is wrong. And that is why China needs to be termed as a rogue nation, and every other nation in this world must boycott every economic activity or social activity with China.
I mean, you have been remarkably blunt and bold and honest and truthful about making the assertion. Because my belief system is that, hey, for petty crimes, people go to prison. For petty crimes, people go to, they serve time, they are tried. This is a disaster of a gigantic proportion. And given the tech intelligence, given the human intelligence, given the fact that we know where it all emanated from, the global leadership owes it to its people. You mentioned about the innocent life. They have no right to take innocent lives. Tragically enough, it is always the innocents who die when the games are played at the highest levels. And that's what is the tragic element of this, is that innocent lives have been tested and they have suffered. And this is the sad part of the entire virus. China even objected to this virus being called as a China virus or related to China. That's where it is, the Hindi phrase "chor ki दाढ़ी में तिनका." वो कहते हैं ना कि that's the way it is sometimes. This is how sometimes it plays out. But the important part here is, why did it happen? Then in that case, if it is man-made, if you believe that way, and I believe the same thing, my conjecture is, based on knowing what we know, is that it emanated from, if you don't want to call it a crime scene, but at least we know the scene where the event happened is in the lab. Whether I was watching the Senate hearings in the US when Senator Rand Paul questioned Dr. Fauci, that you gave X millions of dollars to the Wuhan labs, and it was very educative to learn how the English language wordplay was playing out when Fauci said, NIH didn't give, but one of the bodies related to could have given. Now you are the boss. Where does the buck stop? So my next question and next inquiry would be, why was it created in the first place? Why was it unleashed? What was the trigger point? What was the compelling factor that this virus needs to be released to destabilize things the way they are? Who was benefiting from it all? As the saying that every disaster has an opportunity for someone. This disaster, who is benefiting from it all? Your thoughts?
Vibhuti, in order to understand the question that you have just asked me, it's very important to understand two things. One, and also accept, the first one is the understanding of the origin of the virus. Now, the Wuhan lab is a P4 lab. A P4 lab, by its sheer definition, deals with very, very dangerous viruses. Their job is to experiment, test, and understand very dangerous viruses that can impact humanity. Now, Dr. Xi Jinping, she's the most instrumental lady, and she should be the lady who should be questioned by a competent global authority to understand what is it that she has done. Now, you must understand her studies. Her studies way back in 2007, 2008 as well, she published a paper which spoke about the fact that the virus, the coronavirus, the particular coronavirus that she was working on, could move from animals to humans by a certain amount of amino acids that they get spiked with, which are known as spike proteins. Between 310 to 518 is the terminology that they use scientifically. So what she did do was able to do just that, move the coronavirus from animals to humans. Now that happened way back in 2007, 2008 when she put out that paper. You have Fauci and his NIH funding the same studies and the same experiments. So everybody knows. Okay, even if you go through a WikiLeaks documents that came out in 2009, they talk about US being aware of bio-warfare, that there's a possibility to use the same viruses that are there to unleash bioweapons. Now, all these are part of documents that are available. So US is aware, China is aware, there is a funding that has gone from US to China to get Dr. Xi Jinping to work on these experiments, and you have the Wuhan lab where these experiments are happening. Now let's for a moment think and not accord the blame to China that they deliberately released the virus. Let's say it's an accident. The most crucial aspect of this accident is the way the virus would have moved within Wuhan and outside the world. There is one connecting point to the entire thing, and that is the Metro Line 2. Because the Wuhan lab, the Hunan seafood market, the PLA hospital, which had the first 4 cases, and the international airport, all of them use the same Metro Line 2. So the first 4 cases that came into the PLA hospital. Now, the most evident question in that situation is, why would a civilian from a Hunan seafood market, as per claims, earlier claims, that the virus was first found in the Hunan seafood market, come into a military hospital? It could have gone to a civilian hospital, right? Unless the first victims that were probably not recorded actually came from the Wuhan lab itself. You are aware that there are 2 scientists from the Wuhan lab who died, rather questionably, but we will never find that truth. The point is this: if China was able to unleash accidentally or deliberately the virus, the point is that the Metro Line 2 was the carrier of the virus in a strong amount of community. Now, the Metro Line 2 was also instrumental for people leaving from China. So, from the Metro Line, you come to the airport, and from the airport, you leave to your countries. And Wuhan has a lot of economic activity. The first 3 cases in India were people who came from Wuhan. So when this travel was allowed, when the World Health Organization, chastised countries for stopping travel, that is the time you realize that, oh, wait, this is a little strange. You should have contained the entire area. But the World Health Organization Director General, Dr. Tedros, clearly chastised countries for making China the villain. Now, ask yourself one question, Vibhuti. Why did the pandemic not spread in other parts of China if you go by official records? There are only almost 90,000 cases only. China stands at number 96 position, when it started at number 1 position, and roughly about 3,900 deaths. 3.5 million people have died. The source of the pandemic, according to the World Health Organization, is Wuhan seafood market. Yet, only 3,900 people die in all of China's official records. And the remaining 3.5 million is in the rest of the world. Don't you find that odd? Don't leaders around the world find such figures odd and mind-boggling? That China is able to secure its entire country and not the rest of the world? It clearly means that whether it was by mistake, whether it was deliberate, what was happening at the Wuhan P4 lab was experiments on bioweapon to be used against humanity, and that is what China has done. China has unleashed a bioweapon. Look at the nations that are being affected by it. All these nations at some point of time or in present are competitive to China's growth to becoming a global economic power. And that really is the game of China. It's not only China alone. China has to be heavily helped by certain lobbies in the World Health Organization and in pharmaceutical companies to turn this need of China for global economic dominion into a business proposition in order for it to be successful.
You have hit upon all the subject matters that interest me, and we have talked about it many times in the past. And that's what is fascinating. It almost looks like, a general's war room, where all the pawns and all the artillery and all the weapons are laid out, and then you move them as the case may be. So what intrigued me, and I'll tell you, as a student of geopolitics, what I was told by a very veteran, master of geopolitics, that things don't happen by accident. They happen because you want it to happen. So if my theory is very simple, that China can live with an economically prosperous South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan, But but China cannot accept India, which is as large a country as it is in relation to population, opportunity, and resources, and has the potential to become the second magnet of manufacturing, manufacturing hub for the world. As the saying goes, you can't keep two swords in the same sheath. To use the Hindi thing is that ek mayan mein do talwarein nahi reh sakti hain. So that's what China is concerned about India. And China was concerned about the United States because it's definitely trying to downgrade or make United States suffer. And if it was not for Mr. Trump, China would be having a field day with the United States. That's what Trump was continuously hammering about. That I don't blame China for trying to become an economic giant. I blame ourselves and our leaders who negotiated a bad deal with China. So the question is that China was playing the game to undermine both these economies politically, because both the leaders, Trump and Modi, were not taking China easily, or they were not letting him have a go. And that's the geopolitical factor that has happened, in my opinion, in which Trump is gone. We know now, because his pride was a booming economy. Today's economy looks shattered. Inflation is all over. Gas prices have gone up. Even used car prices have gone up by 9 to 10%. Think about it in the US. And trillions of dollars are being printed in the name of protecting the grandchildren, not realizing how much burden you are putting on the grandchildren with reference to debt that the United States government is doing right now. So do you think that the political one-upmanship that happened, that China tested with India, with Modi in Galwan and other Ladakh valleys, and the resurgence of India because of the coronavirus, a lot of companies began to move out of China, and many came to India, many were going to Vietnam and other places. That has played a role? Your thoughts?
Well, I have no doubt in my mind, Vibhuti, that China has been planning this for quite some time. You must understand, one of the areas that they had needed to have controlled was the World Health Organization. For 10 years prior to Dr. Tedros, the Director General was Dr. Margaret Chan, who was a Chinese, who's a Chinese national. Dr. Tedros comes from Ethiopia. He comes from a left-leaning political party, which is ideally fitting with what China's interests are. And China was very instrumental in lobbying, along with the some other African nations, for Dr. Tedros to be in the seat of power. Number two, Dr. Tedros is lobbying to get re-elected as the Director General of the World Health Organization. Why I say it's important to understand why this connect is important, and that it has not happened only in Dr. Tedros' tenure. It has happened way back in 2006 when Dr. Margaret Chan came into play. So you need to understand from there. You had SARS, that was a problem when Margaret Chan was around, and how they dealt with it over there. And you see the amount of mistakes that the World Health Organization made at that point of time are the same mistakes they're making right now, and it's having a more disastrous effect than they did there. The first mistake was the World Health Organization continues to hide behind the public health emergency of national concern, which they called on January 30th. According to them, in my discussions with Dr. Tedros and the World Health Organization, they have told me that that is the highest level category alert warning of the World Health Organization as far as health concern, a public health concern is concerned. But on March 9th, they categorized it as a pandemic. It was only after March 9th that the nations started to take the seriousness of the virus and the probability now that this pandemic could spread in their countries. And that is why you had lockdowns initiated after March 9, right up till the end of the month of March. But they never did it in the month of Jan, when the public health concern was issued, of international concern. Now, I asked the World Organization, one of the people, senior people in the group, they told me, of course, it's not a part of an alert mechanism. A pandemic is not. But I went through their documents, and in 2013, there is an alert for pandemic that the Director General can call for after discussion with the expert panel group that he has of experts. They could have done that, but they didn't do it. They did not do it at all. If they would have done it at that point of time, and there was a mechanism to contain the spread within Wuhan itself, like China did. It's not that China didn't contain the virus. It contained the virus in Wuhan. But because the World Organization did not raise the alarm of a pandemic, and behind the IHR rules of 2005, saying that the PHEIC is the highest alert, the world was allowed to be infected by the virus. Now, why did they do that? The answer is very simple. The World Health Organization, in all its press conferences or statements made on China, has always stood in favor of China, if you analyze it. And they did that because China allowed for this virus through World Health Organization's to attack countries around the world. And that is why its biggest enemies, two of its biggest enemies, India and the USA, suffer the most. One is a country that has probably one of the best and robust healthcare systems in the world. The other, which is India, may or may not have a robust healthcare system, but it's still an enemy of China. And that is why China, or both of them, you'll see the problem will happen in Japan. The second wave in Japan will be worse. Every enemy of China, Russia is another country, Brazil. These are nations that China wants global dominion over. Not much of the African nations got affected because China has got a considerable amount of hold on African nations. You will see a pattern. And that pattern will tell you that China has unleashed a bioweapon and that China must be penalized and must be taken to court, and Xi Jinping, the president, must be tried as a war criminal because this is war. This is not an accident. This is not a freak of nature. This is war, Vibhuti, unleashed on innocent people around the world just to satisfy the ego, the lust for power of one country that is run by the Communist Party and by Xi Jinping. And this is the worst face of the Communist Party you can ever see anywhere else in the world. This is a death of humanity. It's diabolic.
I definitely applaud your, assertion that you have said and connecting the dots, as we call it. It is more than obvious whether you have the best of infrastructure or not so good an infrastructure. And both India and US stand out in that regard, as you rightly pointed out. In both the places, the strategy was to crush the infrastructure and cause chaos. So in my Long Island Expressway, we have a 6-lane traffic, but there is a time of peak hours when there is a traffic jam, which we know all about, right? It happens globally in peak hours. But if you crush the infrastructure in such a way that there is a perpetual jam, that infrastructure crashes. Compared to that, India healthcare was not so robust at all. Since India survived the first one, the second one had to be unleashed. That's what I believe, that whatever the attendance, Lancet wrote a scathing indictment. This is what is also very worrisome and points out to a political manipulation of the whole process, because you are seeing an organized, orchestrated attack on American leadership and Indian leadership around the global landscape. You have think tanks in the US, and I won't name them here, but I can give you the references to that. You can read it. That people working for China Chair, China Chair, are talking about the global failure of leadership in US and India to not warn its people about the impending crisis and to handle the challenge. They are talking about, and I have it on record saying that, I'll send it to you to read that, saying that let bygones be bygones and let's work together to find the solution. I'm reminded of a movie called Mission Impossible 2. There is a reference to the virus chimera and antidote called Valeroform. Put the movie theatricals aside, but the stock prices, the domination, the crushing of things is in play. It is happening in that way. So sometimes movies, they say, that reflects the state of the society, but that's what is happening. And that's what reminds me of this fact, that there is a concentrated attack. Lancet's article is absolutely amazing, the way they have attacked Prime Minister Modi, his failure. But didn't realize that India has 300,000 less deaths than United States has. So the panic in the second one brought about the crash and chaos in India. And I hope the people in India wake up to this reality, that you are being manipulated. Your leadership, your economy is being manipulated to impose and threaten the system as it is. The other thing that comes to my mind is, China are also using the democratic process to their complete advantage, and they do it in a different manner. As the saying goes, democracies are creatures of rule of law. The laws are made by men, and men can be managed. So with their boatloads of money, because they became the manufacturing hub for the entire world, whereas they are manufacturing the PPEs and all the antidotes, and they are sending it to the rest of the world. So look at it this way: their economy is growing. We are not. So this is a very important challenge for the rest of the world to face and come to conclusion. And I believe that those people who are asking for boycott and sanction of Israel, they should think about boycotting and sanction of China, because that's where their challenge lies, because they are the manufacturing. If they stop their stuff, think about it. Prime Minister Modi imposed restrictions, banned many of their apps. It hit them hard on the pocket. The second wave in India has followed that. And that is indeed your point earlier on you were talking about, is very relevant. Why is it hitting these two countries and those who are inimical to China's interests hardest, whereas the rest of them are not? Why didn't China share what they did to prevent the spread of Wuhan virus in its country? What do you think?
Backstage. Can you hear me?
Did you hear what I said?
Vibhuti? Did you hear what I said? Yes, I did. I was backstage. Good. Sorry, because of a technical issue. Well, you see, you must understand China's nature. Okay? China wants and knows that it has now got the potential to become the global super economic power. China has been working on this plan for the last several decades. Now that it has put India and the US in very questionable positions with the virus, with the pandemic, and with the pandemic in other major countries. As you rightly pointed out, the chimera needs a Bellerophon, and that is probably what China will use. But the Bellerophon will not be in terms of cure for the virus, because the vaccines have already come out. But the real cure that China will come out is to those economies that have faced the onslaught because of this pandemic. And that is where China will take its foothold into nations, the smaller nations, the influencing nations that they can influence, to gain stronger strength in the UN, in World Health Organization, in various other associations. Even look at the recent Israel-Palestinian issue. You have China that is playing a very critical role to try to ensure that they get the best out of both Israel and Palestine. So China's got a plan in its mind. For China to be successful, China has to make India and US irrelevant. India and US would only become relevant if the political parties that are there in India and US toe China's line. And that is why in the US you saw Donald Trump losing the elections. That is exactly what you're going to witness in India. That there's going to be so much of propaganda, so much of mayhem, that the entire perception of Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, instead of being at a high, which it was, is now slowly coming down because of the propaganda war and because of the failure of the BJP-led government in dealing with propaganda the way Israel deals with propaganda and people who attack its country. So is China a villain? China is a very smart villain. China is not our ally. Either it's the ally of the US. Is US our ally? Absolutely not. The current government in the US is more closer to China than they'll ever be to India. And as long as we as Indians continue to play this Gandhian style of politics, we will always remain where we are. We will never grow up to become a superpower, because you know what? This is war. And even now, the Indian government will not take the fight to China, knowing fully well that this is war.
Yes, you are. You need to. That's right. You brought in very relevant geopolitical factors in this. These are my beliefs. So I can easily end the program by saying I agree with you wholeheartedly. but the world needs to hear from you. World needs to know from you, because people are independent voices must be known, and that's what is important. That while China is playing a hard geopolitical pragmatic battle, we are inundated with enemies within who are towing that line. So the money plays a big role. And as I said earlier, that in democracies, you take advantage of that, you abuse it, and money makes the world go round. So there you have very vital paid elements that start the cacophony of attack. And that's what is remarkable, is that how the media also plays into, and independent people like you and I get throttled, or we are told to shut up. Look at this country today. I mean, this is a remarkable thing. People will say you are a Trumpite or a Modi Bhakt or whatever. I don't care. I'm an independent. Modi doesn't pay me and Trump didn't pay me. Perhaps they don't even know me. But as an independent observer, you have to make a comment on what you see as you see. And that's what I'm seeing, that China has been at the root of everything that is happening around the world. You have to understand that geopolitical terms, as well as the economic battle is critical. China has been systematically trying to bring down, in United States in the currency manipulation, and there was only one guy who called them out, and that was Trump. And it appears that in political alignments, he had to go. And then you found collaborators, they talked about Russia collusion. The reality was the colluding actually happened somewhere else. It's like the weapons of mass destruction were not in Iraq, they were sitting in Iran, but you bombed Iraq out of the map of the world. That's what I'm trying to say, that manipulation happens at significant levels of activity. Are we aware of that? Atithi Devo Bhava may be a great concept, and it is. Atithi Devo Bhava is a great concept, but somebody who is out at the barbarian at the gate is out to slit your throat. He is not going to be satisfied with a champagne or gulab jamun. He will have them and still split your throat. So we have to reposition our thoughts, reassess our thoughts to identify the nature of the beast that you are dealing with. And I have said this many times. India has to come to a harsh acceptance of the reality that China does not mean well to you. Any adjustments that they make in a short term is only a tactical adjustment, but their global strategy, their grand vision is destruction of India or annihilation of India, so that the smaller countries of the world who are scared of China because of their killer contracts, and China is the landowner kind of a thing. They use their money, sovereign fund to do all that. So what needs to happen? Where does that institutional thing must happen? How do we deal with the opposition other than exposing them for what they do?
You see, Vibhuti, the most important aspect we must understand is that China, in a behavioral habit, is more a dominant character and prefers to have submissive people or nations dealing with it. So by dominant, it always likes to be in control, it always likes to be in charge, and it always likes to instruct that it's my way or it's the highway. India, however, has been over a period of time very submissive as a country. The lack of submissiveness was noticed when Prime Minister Modi took over the governance of India, and you saw India flexing its muscle on the global stage. I think it was this aspect of India flexing its muscle on the global stage that caught the attention of China and the rest of the world. They knew when they tried it with Trump, it would be successful. All they had to do was to replicate the same with a higher virility in the virus as far as India was concerned. And that is why you have the double mutant virus. Now, how it's come about to become a double mutant virus is for investigations that the Indian government must work on. The point is, what does the double mutant virus do? So for the first few months of lockdown, you had what we would consider to be an economic strain, but we managed the health strain. Now, we are stuck between managing the economic strain and managing the health strain as well. That is why you cannot go in for a full lockdown. Point number 3. In the first stage, the center took complete responsibility and the states started to beat the center, started to criticize the center. So in the second wave, the center said, okay, states, you deal with your problem. We will provide you the requisite impetus that you require, the requisite facilities and support that you require, but you deal with your own problem. And that's where it got divided. So what you have is dealing with a crisis which is a national crisis and not a state crisis. This is a national crisis. But China, using its own opposition leaders, the media that it feeds in India, has divided the center and the states into two camps. And that is when you cannot deal with this health crisis as a national crisis. And that's the main problem. The main problem now is first we were united. The blame games were reduced. Now the blame games have intensified. BJP would be blaming AAP would be blaming BJP, Congress will be blaming BJP, BJP will be asking for apologies from Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi. We'll keep going around in circles. And you know what will happen? People will continue to die. And they are dying. And all of them, the center and the states, are actually playing into the hands of China to create chaos. Because what you see happening now in media, in the propaganda around, is chaos. They are spreading fear, Vibhuti, fear. And when there is fear, there is very little hope. And that is exactly what has happened. So we have to rebound. We have to come back, not as center states, but as Indians to fight this health crisis. So at this point of time, no matter how much you might disagree with Narendra Modi, how much you might want to blame him, this is not the time to play politics. This is the time to save lives. Therefore, we need to up our infrastructure immediately, get the requisite vaccination done strongly around to the people who require it and need it. Get vaccines in the country produced and reach out to people who are suffering, reach out to people who are finding it difficult. Stop the political games, because eventually you're playing into the hands of China. And I'm sure the opposition would love to play into the hands of China. They've been paid almost to play into the hands of China. But please remember that this is your country first. This country can never belong to China.
You said it right, Savio, completely, because you use the word fear. You know, you drew parallels to something that we have seen happen in the United States as well, that how the opposition blamed Trump for mismanaging. It is the same script being played out in India as well. You look at it this way, that New York and California, New Jersey, Washington State, Oregon, these were the states that were Democratic Party run, and they were the maximum cause for deaths and cases in the US. Trump gave them all help that was possible. As a matter of fact, the governors of these states are on record that Trump administration did everything we asked for. They have the grip, they have their fingers on the pulse of the problem. But politics played a different role. I am comparing these 5 states in the US with Bombay, Delhi, Maharashtra, Laghur. I call Maharashtra now a Laghu Rashtra, poor chaps, because the way they are, the political alignment is working. And every other state has caused the similar kind of a problem, similar kind of a script being played out. And you refer to the word called fear. That's absolutely correct. The chaos happens when there is a fear, there is ignorance, and there is lack of transparency. You are seeing this in full play. Fear installed in people that what is going to happen, nobody knows. Today there is a shortage of oxygen. Tomorrow we do not know what's going to be in shortage. So you are looking at a scenario which is very evil played out. But the other also important part is, and we have to come to a close of the show, is that, you know, this bothers me a lot. This bothers me a lot that the people are not concerned about what the factor that you said, that there are innocent lives being lost. Karma will come to haunt you. And that's what is important for everybody to know. You cannot go against the country. There was a very interesting statement used in a Senate hearing called the gain of function. And the gain of function was achieved in the Wuhan virus in the bio research done. So there are a lot of moving parts in this entire issue. But the important part for everybody to know is that this is a bigger conspiracy than it appears. But the world has a way that nobody knows who killed Kennedy. Nobody knows the entire 9/11 commission that happened. People have a tendency to never put the fingers on the pulse of the problem. And that's what I see, a cacophony of chorus going on right now by various think tanks who are, I do not know, bidding the greatest terrorist nation in the world, forgive and forget. Let's get to the table. Let's solve the problem. Let's handle the future pandemics if it happens. Pandemics will happen. It's not a surprise about it. What is important thing is that are we letting the criminals get away? Sooner the world finds the solution, identifies. I'm saying that exactly what you said. I don't care whether it is criminal indictment. I want to find out who did it, why did it happen, and why China did not tell the world that they had found the solution so that it didn't spread in their country. But it is spreading in India, but not in Bangladesh, where the density of population is the same. Not in Pakistan, not in Nepal, not anywhere else, but India alone. Why it has hit US, on a per capita basis, our death rates are so much less compared to the millions. We have 300,000 less deaths than the US. The point of the matter is that for Indians not to panic, this is a time for the famous word, sabr ka result acha hoga. This is a time for patience and trust your government. This man is not against you. Let's put it this way, regardless of what the opposition might say. You have the last 1 minute on your last comment.
Vibhuti, the most important aspect, it would not matter to me if Narendra Modi was not the Prime Minister of the country at this point of time. If anybody else was the Prime Minister of the country at this point of time, I think as an Indian citizen, it is my responsibility to ensure that I contribute towards getting my country out of this health crisis that is very soon going to also lead to an economic crisis. So my appeal to every Indian in India and around the world, for once in your life, understand the enemy in front of you. You cannot see this enemy, but this enemy has the potential to destroy your country, to ensure that people are dead, people you love, people who are your friends. It's not the time to look at somebody because of his political compulsions. It is a time to work with people, because at the end of the day, we are all citizens of the same country that we love. Therefore, stay united and fight COVID together.
Thank you, Savio, for being on the show today. And thank you very much for enlightening the objective way that you connected the dots. And that's what is important for us to know. Today, we have information available thanks to technology. Make some research, make an educated analysis yourself. Don't depend upon somebody saying something. Make an assessment. You can check what we are saying is right or wrong. You have this ability to do that. If you can't do that, then we will continue to suffer from ignorance, fear, and lack of information. Source the information. With these words, I would urge all your viewers to like, subscribe to the show. We are new in JD USA in this part of the world. Thank you for joining today. See you again next week. Thank you, Savio.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.